Before you turn out the lights, before the house settles, before your thoughts finally quiet, stay with me for just a moment longer. This is One More Before Sleep, short horror stories meant to be heard in the dark, when the world feels still and your imagination does the rest. These are tales of quiet dread, lingering unease, and the feeling that something isn't quite right, even when everything looks the same as it always has. So get comfortable, lower the lights, and listen closely. There's always time for one more before sleep. When Addison was a kid, the words that sprang to his mind when he thought of Mars were ones like amazing, exciting, unbelievable, and impossible. As an adult, starting his 3rd-year-long contract on Mars, the word that he most associated with the big red dust ball was boring. Around the time Addison got to high school, some major breakthroughs in technology had made the time to get to Mars go from 10 months to 6 weeks, and it was no longer a one-way trip. By the time he graduated, the job market on Mars was in full swing. Unfortunately for Addison, most of the good jobs on Mars required things like a college degree, motivation, the desire to better oneself through hard work, and a can-do attitude. Addison had none of these things. Fortunately for Addison, even Mars needed janitors. The need for janitors plus the need for Addison's father, the CEO of one of the largest backers of the new Mars expedition, to keep his son from embarrassing him further in front of the paparazzi, meant that 3 weeks after graduating with a 1.7 GPA and 3 DUI charges on his juvenile record, Addison found himself heading to Mars. Most contracts for Mars employees were on a 1-year rotation with time off to travel back to Earth to see family. Through an unspoken agreement, neither Addison nor his father wanted to be on the same planet, so Addison stayed on Mars, and his father stayed on Earth. Addison slowly pushed the dust mop across the floor of Warehouse 4. He knew his manager expected him to be finishing up Warehouse 7 by now, but he wouldn't do anything about it. It's not like he could fire Addison, since technically they both worked for his father. Addison learned his first month on the job. His father paid his manager an extra $3,000 a month just to put up with him. The thought of that made him mad. His stupid manager made more to ignore him than Addison made in a month to bust his ass 6 hours a day. Addison chuckled to himself. Even in his most self-deluded state, he knew he had never busted his ass a day in his life. Why would he? He was a trust fund kid whose father was a billionaire. Once he turned 25, he'd have access to his trust fund, and then he could do whatever he wanted. Nix watched the human male as he wandered lazily around one of the many buildings that the humans had built on the surface of Mars. The thought of it still made her chuckle. After decades of sending probes and automated vehicles, the humans finally figured out how to get here. The natives didn't call themselves Martians, of course. But Nix spent so much time studying the humans, she found herself slipping into using terms like Mars and Martians, which annoyed her clan leader to no end. But Nix was one of the best, so her clan leader rarely made a fuss about the occasional slip-up. Her slender fingers flew across the surface of her interface, each 7-fingered hand moving at a speed that even the fastest human couldn't hope to come close to. It was nearly time. Nix's blue skin glowed with anticipation of what was about to happen. Soon she would meet a human for the first time. Addison, your life is about to change, and you don't even know it, Nix thought as she shut down her workstation and stretched her wings before diving off the edge and free-falling deeper into the planet. Addison lay in his bunk and tossed a tennis ball across the room. He liked the way it arced in the low gravity. It came back to his hand and, without thinking, he tossed it again. This is how he spent most of his time when he wasn't sweeping or working out. Addison had loved to work out when he was on Earth. On Earth there were girls to impress, girls who he could show off for with his expensive clothes and cars. He scowled as he thought about the last time he drove a car. A brand new Ferrari with a custom paint job. Addison had been there in Maranello, Italy, to take possession of the supercar as it came off the assembly line. "It wasn't my fault that I lost control while racing down the Autobahn 2 weeks later. I only had 2 drinks." That had been what pushed his father over the edge. Addison still winced when he thought about the tongue lashing he had received in the hospital in Berlin. More than one nurse had tried to come in and check on him before his father's security had quickly removed them from his room. Addison caught the ball as it bounced back to him and froze. He thought he had seen something, a flash of blue from the corner of his eye outside his room's window. He let the ball slowly fall to the floor as he stood up and walked over to the 8-inch thick window that looked out over the surface of Mars. There, off in the distance, a flash of blue reflecting from the setting sun. Excited, Addison slipped out of his room and made his way toward the vehicle bay. His father's one concession was that he allowed Addison to have a personal vehicle on Mars. It was only after he got here that Addison realized his dreams of tearing across an empty planet while blasting music would never happen. The 6-wheeled vehicle barely moved faster than he could walk, and only served to remind him how much his father had taken from him. Addison donned coveralls, a loose-fitting suit that was airtight but was only safe for use in a vehicle. It lacked the insulation of a full spacesuit, but it was far more comfortable to wear while in a pressurized vehicle. Grabbing a helmet, he climbed into his rover and headed toward the airlock. Out on the surface, Addison made his way slowly toward the spot where he thought he last saw the flash of blue. It was an hour before he saw it again, not a reflection, a blue light blinking on and off. He was close enough now he could see that it was coming from inside a large cave. Nix watched as the human called Addison drove towards the cave entrance. She walked backwards, deeper into the cave, occasionally blinking the blue light on and off to draw him further into the cavern. She had spent nearly an hour trying to get his attention with the light as he threw his tennis ball, whatever that was, against the wall. Her people had long ago worked their way into the humans' primitive computers and could monitor everything that happened in their ever-expanding base, as well as trick their senses into seeing only what they expected on a dead planet. As the human's vehicle passed the threshold, a force field engaged over the mouth of the cave, blocking all transmissions between the rover and the base, and once again camouflaging the cave entrance from the humans. Nix continued to walk backward, leading the human deeper underground as the atmosphere processors worked to pressurize the cave to an atmosphere more suitable for the human. She wondered if the occupant of the vehicle even noticed the changes around him. From her 2 years of observation, she doubted it. The one called Addison seemed oblivious to most things. Finally, she stopped and let Addison approach. She unfurled her translucent blue wings right as the vehicle's headlights found her. Addison froze, his jaw hanging open as he saw the creature in front of him. "Oh my God, it's an angel!" was his first thought as he saw Nix. Her eyes seemed to glow with an inner light as she began to walk toward him, her hips swaying with each step as her translucent wings fluttered behind her. Slowly, his mind caught up with what he was seeing. He wasn't having a supernatural experience. He was having an extraterrestrial one. He was the first person to ever meet a Martian, and she was hot. The alien approached slowly, mouth curving into an alluring smile, her hands tucked casually behind her back. Addison felt his heart begin to race as his mind wandered to just how human she might be. Aside from the pointed ears, fairy wings, and the fact that she was completely blue, she could be human. Addison could work with this. Addison smiled as he let his eyes wander up and down her body, all the right curves in all the right places, concealed beneath a form-fitting suit that showed off her body very well. As she approached, she brought one hand up and pressed 2 fingers to the glowing device at her throat. Addison barely had time to notice the extra fingers before her voice filled the interior of his vehicle. "Welcome, Addison. I am called Nyx. You have been chosen from all your people who have come to our planet to be the representative of Earth." Addison froze as he listened to the sexiest voice he had ever heard pouring through the speakers. She stood just outside the vehicle's airlock, her smile more seductive than ever. "We have adjusted this vehicle to match your planet so that you may leave your vehicle and meet with us face to face." Addison tried to beat his brain into remembering how to pull up the external sensors on his vehicle. He had been trained in how to ensure the vehicle bay was safe before exiting back at the base, but he'd never bothered to do it, trusting that the base environmental controls would be working. Nyx waved her hand, sending commands to the onboard computer, forcing it to display the needed data. The air was breathable, and the temperature was what her people determined was ideal for most humans. They were not that much different than the conditions to which her own people kept the planet's core, although they did prefer a slightly thicker atmosphere than that of Earth. Combined with Mars's lower gravity, it allowed them to fly through the interior of the planet with ease. Impatient to solidify his place as the first human to meet a Martian, Addison hurriedly cycled through the airlock procedures, not even bothering to reattach his helmet to the loose-fitting coveralls he wore. Addison stumbled out of the airlock, forgetting about the lighter gravity as he nearly sent himself flying in his haste. Nyx's hand moved in a blur, wrapping around his bicep and catching him, completely stopping his forward momentum. His face flushed red with embarrassment as he quickly regained his footing. Addison stood awkwardly, feeling foolish in the baggy coveralls. How was he supposed to make a good impression with this hottie while wearing a potato sack? In a flash, inspiration struck. The air was breathable, he was safe, and didn't need to wear it. He began to strip out of the oversized suit, thankful to whatever gods existed in the universe that he had changed out of his janitor's uniform and into something more stylish after his shift. He flexed his arms, making sure to show off his bulging muscles in his sleeveless Ed Hardy tank top. Nyx didn't react, but he knew she had to be impressed. All the ladies were impressed by his arms. He took his time sliding the coveralls down over his hips, hopefully giving Nyx a good show as she got to see his artfully distressed jeans, which hugged his ass nicely. Feeling far more confident, Addison stepped forward and held out his hand to Nyx. She mimicked his gesture. Her giggle caught him off guard as he brought her hand to his lips and kissed it lightly, a move that had sealed the deal with many ladies back on Earth. "I am honored to be Earth's representative to the Martian people," Addison said, giving her his best smile. "Take me to your leader." A confused look flashed over Nyx's face before she hid it. "Take me to your leader? What an odd thing to say," Nyx thought. Why would her clan leader need to meet the human when she was the one who was chosen to meet with him? Ignoring the phrase, Nyx reached out and took Addison's hand, and began escorting him deeper into the cave. Nix walked for nearly a mile, talking to Addison about Mars, although she knew he wasn't paying attention to a word she said. She could feel his pulse, smell his hormone levels, and practically taste his desire for her in the air. Had the human been more observant, he might have seen her own desires. But after 2 years of observation, she knew this one never focused on anything that wasn't himself. She led him to the edge of a great chasm, one that went down to the very core of their planet, where their ancient gods slept. Over 1,000 miles straight down by human measurement, a depth impossible even for her own people to overcome. "Dear Addison, this is where you will fulfill your destiny for Mars and for Earth." Nix took a step back as Addison inched closer to the edge. He stared down into the core of the planet, a burning jewel at the bottom shining back brightly. She wrapped her arms around him from behind. Addison leaned back against her chest, smiling as Nix brushed her lips against his neck and tightened her embrace as a lover would. "Are you ready to fulfill your destiny, Addison?" Nix mumbled, her lips still pressing gently against his neck, feeling his rapid pulse as his heart pounded in his chest. Addison nodded. His throat was too dry to speak. "Thank you, Addison. You will be the first sacrifice to the gods of Mars, but you won't be the last." Too late, her words registered with Addison's hormone-addled brain. Before he could react, her gentle embrace constricted around him like steel bands, pinning his arms to his sides. Pain burst through his neck as Nix bit into him, sharp teeth tearing effortless through his skin. Nix leapt into the air, her powerful wings flapping as she carried Addison out over the pit, her teeth continuing to tear at his throat. When she reached the center, she released her grip and let him fall. She licked her lips, savoring the taste of the human sacrifice as she flew back to the edge of the pit, alighting gracefully as she waited for a sign from her gods. Would they accept her clan's sacrifice, or would they demand she fly out to the center of the pit before tearing out her own throat with her bare hands, falling to where they waited below? After what felt like an eternity, the walls shook as Nix's gods spoke to her in one voice. "Bring us more. Mars is hungry."